couple weeks ago, my son came into my office like they always do on Wednesday nights. My wife brings him in so they can say hi to Daddy and give me a hug and a kiss. And he walks into my office and he walks around behind, and he always does two things. Number one, he always goes to the bookshelf behind my desk and grabs the little turtle and the Mayan man that's up there from our trips to Belize. And then he looks over the guitar and he always says, "Guitar? Guitar?" And I say, "Yep, that's a guitar." And a couple weeks ago, I just had some fun. I said, "Titus, can you play the guitar?" And he said, "Yes, Daddy." And so I said, "Okay, play the guitar." So he walks over, and it sounded something like this. Something along those lines, because he's just sitting there whacking the thing with his hand. And so I said, "Titus, do you really know how to play the guitar?" And he said, "Yes, Daddy," and just started whacking the thing again, and all the sounds are going crazy. And so I took the guitar from him, and I just played a simple E chord, but I said, "No, Titus, this is how you play the guitar." And so I went, and I played the guitar for him like that, and he goes, "Oh." And so I put it back down on the stand, and I said, "Titus, can you play the guitar?" "Yes, Daddy." I said, "Okay, let's see it." Something along those lines. And as I sat there and talked to my son about that, there was a poem that came to mind. And I want to read you the poem because I think it'll help. I understand I'm going to be pulling a piece of paper up and reading it to you, but I think the poem will help you understand where I'm coming from with this illustration. All right, here it goes. "Well, it was battered and scarred, and the auctioneer felt it was hardly worth his while to waste much time on this old violin. But he held it up with a smile. 'It sure ain't much, but it's all we got left. I guess we ought to sell it too. Now who'll start the bid on this old violin? Just one more, we'll be through.' Then he cried, 'One, give me $1. Who'll make it $2? Only $2? Who'll make it $3? $3 twice. Now that's a good price. Now who's got a bid for me? Raise up your hand and just don't wait any longer. The auction's about to end. Who's got $4? Just $1 more to bid on this old violin?' The air was hot, and the people stood around as the sun was setting low. From the back of the crowd, a gray-haired man came forward and picked up the bow. He wiped the dust from the old violin and tightened up the strings. Then he played out a melody pure and sweet, sweeter than the angels sing. And then the music stopped. And the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, he said, 'What am I to bid for this old violin?' Then he held it up with the bow. And then he cried, 'One, give me 1,000. Who'll make it 2? Only 2,000. Who'll make it 3? 3,000's twice. Now that's a good price, but who's got a bid for me?' Then the people cried out, 'What made the change? We don't understand.' Then the auctioneer stopped, and he said with a smile, 'It was the touch of a master's hand.' Now you know many a man with a life out of tune is battered and scarred with sin, and he's auctioned cheap to a thankless world, much like that old violin. But then the master comes, and the foolish crowd, they never understand the worth of a soul and the change that is wrought just by one touch of the master's hand." You know why it made me think about that with my son in that room in my office a couple weeks ago? Is because my son thought he had the master's touch. Now, I can't play the guitar that well. I mean, you've heard me play it every now and then, but I can't play it that well. But I know how to play it better than my son. Yet I even showed my son how I could play the guitar, and he still thought he could play it better. You know what's crazy about that illustration? Teenagers do the exact same thing spiritually. We will look at God and say, "I know how to play my life. I know what college I should go to. I know how I should act around my parents. I know who I should date. I know who I should talk to. I know what I should do. Just leave me alone. I'll play it." And you end up sounding like this. Because you're not the master. You don't have the master's hand. When God the whole time is saying, "Listen, just allow me to play a simple melody from your life. Just allow me to have control of the strings, and I will play a melody that comes from you that will glorify me, and that everyone around you will know that your life puts forth a sweet melody of me." But we have a lot of teenagers who aren't willing to step into a love relationship with Jesus Christ. They'll say, "Yeah, I love Christ. I love him. I go to church every now and then, and you know, I don't curse. I haven't had sex before marriage. I do those types of things." Hey, wait a minute. Yeah, you might get a simple E chord out of that, but is that truly a melody? Because me just going like this does nothing. But if you do a chord progression, you keep going. That was terrible, but you keep going. That's when there's actually a song coming forward of it. So yeah, you may say, you know what? I do my devotions. Hey, you know what? I go to church every now and then. Hey, you know what? I enjoy talking to other Christians. But what God wants to do is put all of those chords into a melody. Don't think because you can play a simple E chord with your life that God's good with that. God wants to make a melody out of your life. God wants to use you as an instrument of righteousness. Why is it important that you fall into a crazy, deep love relationship with Jesus Christ? Because there are a lot of people out there who are being sold as cheap violins that need to hear the melody come out of you so they understand there's a master's hand behind it. This week, focus on this thought. Who's playing you? Is it you? Because you're going to sound like this. You're going to sound like Titus when he plays it. Or is it Christ who can play the sweetest melody out of your life? Have a good week.